Here we go. Ciao, Jason. Hello. What's
Hello.
up?
Uh, what's up? I don't know. You tell me what's up. The
All good, all
sky.
good. It was very American. Like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, it's
Like,
not.
too
It's not
much.
really a kind of English term. It would be. What would the English term was? How's it going? That would be it.
It's
How's
going,
it going in a English accent? It's
it's
going.
more polite.
It's
I
going
lived in,
well.
all right, cool. I lived in Dublin like 4 months,
Did you?
and
Dublin. It's a beautiful place,
yeah,
Dublin.
yeah. It was like there, if I remember correctly, it was something like, "What's the crack, lad?" That was pretty much
Yeah,
how
that's the crack.
people were. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
The
was the
crack, yeah,
Irish.
and it has that. The Irish accent is a wonderful accent. I love the Irish accent. It's just
It's
something
cool.
magical about it. Yeah, and
Yeah,
but Ireland in general is just beautiful, beautiful place.
it's a
Did you
beautiful
get
country.
outside of Dublin? Did you go on?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I lived there, but I went to like things that surprised me the most and a lot was the Cliff of Moher, which
yeah,
are like on the top of the country. Like, then was
yes,
incredible. Like,
yeah,
uh,
yeah. I find this about Ireland. When we kind of toured around, we went around the southern kind of coastline, and there was a number of times where you just look at the view and it just doesn't look it looks like something out of some kind of fantasy video game or something, and you're just like, this just that can't be real, it's so stunningly beautiful place. Mm.
yeah, yeah, and I
Yeah,
was fantastic. I mean, I wouldn't probably see myself living in Dublin long term
no.
because I'm Italian and I do suffer a little the weather. Like from Rome, we
Yeah.
grew up yeah,
Yeah,
right.
it's
So
a bit colder. Yeah.
like during summertime, wearing winter coats was, I would say, interesting to me, but overall, not so bad.
Yeah.
So cool. Hey, critic, what's up? Let's people let people sink in. And thanks, Jason, for being with us. It's
Oh,
an
you're
honor and
welcome.
a pleasure to have you.
uh,
And yeah, today basically I got curious when I read on LinkedIn a comment about making GTA Liberty City. Is like, wow, I was playing them when I
yeah.
was, I guess, like 15 years old, perhaps.
Yeah,
And I
well,
was,
we made Liberty City Stories and Liberty City no, GTA Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories for PlayStation Portable, and because we became Rockstar Leeds in when was it? It was April 2004, and but we'd worked with Rockstar on a few projects before that,
all right.
and I think the PlayStation Portable, because we'd been specializing in handheld stuff for a little while before that. We'd done PC and kind of PlayStation stuff as well, but we had a long history on Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, and so we was in a very lucky position to have really early hardware for PlayStation Portable before even publishers had seen it. So Sony, I think
It was
initially it was an emulator. So we had an emulated machine, and then we was able to port our engine to it. And then we got one of the first editions of the hardware, and we put it on the hardware. And we were in I don't know, one of the luckiest positions I've been in, really, on a business level, where we had access to the hardware of a really anticipated console before publishers, and we had publishers coming round, and then we'd show them it'd be the first time the publishers had seen the machine, and it was just
yeah.
like, so, they were introduced to the machine by this developer, and yeah, it opened lots of doors, that, and we'd worked with Rockstar on, what did we do first? We did a demo for a couple of projects for them. One of them was a game called State of Emergency. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I
Uh,
remember it.
Yeah, so we'd worked with the developers for State of Emergency, and we did a Game Boy Advanced version, well, a prototype version, and then they showed that to Rockstar, and Rockstar were impressed by that, but they wasn't really into making it for Game Boy Advance, so they asked us if we'd make Max Payne instead. So we made Max Payne on Game Boy Advance, and that was a big chance, and we knew it was a big chance, so we put our best people on it. We worked really hard, and we did I think a very nice version of Max Payne for Game Boy Advance, and then Rockstar were impressed by that, and then it was shortly after that that they asked if we'd like to become part of the Rockstar Games group. And
But before that, were you running like a dev team? Like, how did you manage to work with Rockstar? Like, let's talk about the foundation of it. Like,
okay, yeah, well, it's a long story, that one.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's why I'm curious to hear like the whole
yeah.
journey.
Okay, well, where to start? I should start right at the beginning, I guess. So, I was born in Leeds, which is a northern city in England, and I kind of grew up. We wasn't. I don't think we wasn't a poor family, but we didn't have access to a lot of money. So it was a good time. I don't want to kind of sort of emphasize that bit, but I would say that became apparent when I found out about computers, because as soon as I learned about computers, I needed a computer. I want a computer now. I want these, because I had mind full of all these kind of crazy spinning discs and flashing lights, and I wanted one of these things. And my dad was an electrician, and he was into electronics. So it's only later that I really kind of understood this, but I had a very early introduction to binary logic with lights and switches and early transistors and things like that. So I'd make sort of little hobby projects. So this is before I got a computer. So eventually I was able to get what was it, a ZX Spectrum, which was a Z80 based home computer. And
wow, I can't recall that.
yes, in the 80s there was you had the Commodore 64, which was very popular. Yeah, and then you also had a machine called the ZX Spectrum, which was made by Sir Clive Sinclair, and he'd made a lot of cheap computers. He started with ZX. I think before it started with calculators, and then a portable television, and then he made a first home computer called a ZX80, and it was ZX81, and then it was the ZX Spectrum, and the ZX Spectrum were the first one to have color, and it was a Z80. I think all of those computers were Z80 based, but the Spectrum, hence the name, was the first one to be color. Yeah. So, and I think it came out initially as a 16K machine, and then it was a 48K. So it was limited memory, and it was a very, very primitive system. But it had the Z80 chip, and the Z80 chip's a very nice CPU, in my opinion. Yeah, it's quite for the time, quite a complex instruction set. It was a bit of a step up from 6502, which was the Commodore 64 chip. And anyway, to cut a long story short, there I managed to save enough money to get myself a ZX Spectrum. Yeah. And it was a long way from the flashing lights and the whizzy discs and things like that. It's just like this small kind of rubber keyed silly thing that you plugged into the home TV. So anyway, I get this, and then I start to want to write programs. And back then, you get a lot of magazines with printed listings in and things like this. Yeah. So you kind of get these magazines and you type these listings in, and you'd hope they'd work. And then it might be a little game of Space Invaders or some kind of, I don't know, some spreadsheet or some little simple thing. Yeah. So I did that for a while, and that gave me a little bit of a grasp of kind of programming. And I started to play the games, and I knew the games were written in Z80 machine code, and I knew I had to learn that in order to compete. Yeah, because I wanted. At that point, I was already of the mindset I wanted to be a games maker. So, so I needed to learn this Z80, and this is back before any internet or any kind of information. And from my background, it was really difficult to suddenly get technical manuals on Z80 machine code and things like this. So,
how did you manage? Like,
I went to the local library, and luckily the lady I was speaking to, she could just add a Rolodex thing, and she went through, and it was like Z80 programmer's manual. Yeah, I think there were a couple, and she ordered them, and they came, and then I took them, and I thought, right, I'm away now, and I went home with these books. And I didn't understand a word in there. I didn't understand anything at all. And it took forever for something to sort of sink in. So, but I persevered. I guess this is my mindset. I'll persevere. I'm kind of one of these people. I won't give up. So I'm banging my head on this. And then finally I got something to work. And it was something just simple, like printing a graphic on screen or something like that. And but the buzz of getting something to work sort of unlocked this whole part of my brain, really. And I very quickly kind of, absorbed as much as possible, and I started to make little games. And I went through this period where I made a lot of kind of small games that weren't finished, so I'd get so far and maybe run out of memory, or it was over ambitious and I couldn't make it fast enough and things like that. But I guess what I was doing is I were exploring, the limits of the machine. And I did that for a while, and I ended up with a lot of little demos. But and there's a key thing here, where my granddad, who was still around at that time, I showed him what I was up to, and he got the idea that I wasn't finishing things, and he just said, "Jason," he says, "if you want to get anywhere in life, you've got to complete things. It's like, it's easy to start things, it's hard to finish them. Yeah, so the next thing you do, make sure you can finish it." Yeah, and it's some of the best advice I've ever been given. So I don't know if it was the next thing that I finished, but I certainly finished something shortly after that. And I got a little game together, and I think it was called Cryogenics, which were like a silly rip-off game, but it was complete. Yeah.
Okay.
And I got such a buzz from finishing this thing, and it was never published, but I was able to use it to apply for a job. Around then, with them magazines I was talking about, you used to get these magazines which were like every other week, and they were just like newspapers, really. And in the back, you get sort of adverts for people wanting kind of programmers. Yeah. Anyway, there was an advert for a company called Enigma Variations in the back of this, and they were looking for Z80 programmers for Spectrum. And I sent off my demos and this game that I finished, and I got an interview, and I went round, and it was in Harrogate, which wasn't too far from where I was living. I had to get a train there, but it wasn't, it was commutable. So I went and I secured this job, and then I ended up working in I had ideas that it'd be in an office complex, with amazing machines and stuff like that, but it turned out to be this guy's house, and he just pulled out all the furniture, and he got a lot of programmers in, and he was making these small budget games which were that sell for kind of £1.99. They were like pocket money games. Yeah, and you get, I think, 2 or 3 weeks to make one, and his whole business model revolved around making these small games and turning them out quick. Yeah, and that was the job, really. So you was in there, and then you were given a game brief, and you had like 2, maybe 3 weeks to completely finish a game, and then it'd be out, and then you'd get another game brief, and you'd do another one. And I did that for probably about a year. So I made a lot of small little budget games, and then what happened is I got to be good friends with it, because there was a group there, and of various programmers on different machines. There was other Spectrum programmers, and then there was Commodore 64, and then there was at this time there was the Amiga and the Atari ST, which were kind of early 16-bit machines. I think there was even PC, and then there was Amstrad CPC as well, which was another Z80 based machine, which wasn't a million miles from the Spectrum. So you could make a Spectrum game and you could port it over to the Amstrad quite quickly. Maybe 2 or 3 days you could get a whole new version. So that was their business model, just very quickly put these games together, and then if you can port them over, then do that. So it'd be 2 or 3 weeks for the Spectrum, and then a couple of days to get it onto the CPC. And while you were doing this, there'd be a Commodore 64 version being made, and maybe an Amiga and an ST as well. Usually the Amiga and ST, they'd spend a little bit longer on them, because they wasn't $199, they'd be like $599 or something like that. So they'd maybe spend, I don't know, 4 weeks or 5 weeks on those ones, and they were big productions, those. Yeah. So, and but they were mostly licensed games. I think we did TV licensed games and just anything which was familiar. Yeah. So I did that for a whole year, and then all the guys I were working with, we just had this idea that we'd go off and we'd make our own company. Yeah. So we were young, and we just thought, well, why not? And this was the late 80s, probably about 88, 89, and we just all decided that we were going to just go and start our own company. So we did. And we all just yeah, we all just got up and we moved. There were a few of the guys, they were living in a shared house together, and we just took all our stuff and put it in the shared house and just carried on doing the same kind of thing. So then suddenly we was making the small budget games, and we did that for a while, but you know, we made a little bit more because there were no middlemen, if you like, and we were just doing it directly for the publishers. And then shortly after that, we got in with Ocean. I think it was Ocean Next, which was like a major publisher, really, of kind of in the through the 80s and early 90s. Ocean were like a UK-based publisher that would do kind of full price games, which were about $9.99 and maybe $19.99 for the ST and Amiga. And anyway, we showed, I think we did, I can't remember exactly what we did, but we ended up working with Ocean, working on a number of games for Ocean. And then we did a bunch of movie licenses. And then what was the big one? We did WWF WrestleMania, yeah, on all the formats, yeah. And that was a big game at the time. And this is how naive I was when we did the deal for that. We didn't ask for royalties. Yeah, we
no way.
No, we didn't. Didn't occur to us because we'd never really seen any royalties before then, so we were quite naive. So you know, we didn't really. We were you know, we were just kids. Yeah, so we kind of did the contract, but we got a lot more for the development than we usually did, and so we were kind of, wow, we're getting a lot more. But we didn't ask for royalties, and then it was at #1 for like ages. Like it was at #1 at Christmas, and then it was into the following year, and I think it kind of went through the summer, and it must have sold loads and loads, and we didn't see a penny. So after that, we learned. It was an experience, but after that we thought, oh well, we must ask for royalties next time, you know.
Okay.
So, and then what happened? So we did that for a while. We worked with Ocean, and then I think we worked with Gremlin Graphics, which is another UK publisher. And
then move. Like, how long did it take to go into Rockstar? Like how this process?
Oh well, it took until 2004 to get to Rockstar, and where I'm at in the discussion is about 1991. Yeah.
Okay, so it's big leap.
So it's still a big bit to go. So to cut it short, what happened was we worked for Ocean for a while, and then I broke away again. I thought, I don't want to make just movie license games and license games. I want to make some original games, and I want to work for like console publishers. So while we were still this group was called Twilight. When I was there, we made a Game Boy. This is why the handheld things kind of comes in here, because we did an original Game Boy game called Alfred Chicken, which were a silly platform game with a little chicken character in it. Yeah, and we did that for Game Boy, and we sold that to a publisher called Mindscape, which was a UK branch of an American publisher called Software Toolworks. Yeah. And it was the first time that we started to deal with American publishers. And there was a great step up in professionalism and finance, really, at this point when you went with the Americans. So we thought, oh, well, we want to work with American publishers now because it makes a lot more business sense. So we kind of pushed that way. And so we released that with Mindscape. And then this is where I thought, I just want to make original games, certainly for a little while. And so I broke away again and set up another company called Hookstone, which its purpose was just to make
new IPs.
Smaller kind of new IP kind of games. So that was about 94, and then the first thing we did was we made a puzzle game. Well, we made about 5 or 6 puzzle games, and each one kind of evolved until we got a quite good prototype together, and then we polished it. Yeah, and it was quite a playable kind of piece, and we got a business agent, and he took that over to America and showed it to Viacom New Media, the MTV people, and they were really interested in putting it out on all formats, and we made that game that was called Zoop, and we made that across I think 9 formats. And anyway, we were still in the house at this point. We were in another guy's house, and suddenly we got this big deal with Viacom New Media over in America, and they were going to come and visit us. So our business guy kind of got some signing funds, for signing a preliminary contract. And then we quickly got offices together and tables and chairs and set it up so we looked half professional, sort of just in a few weeks while the Viacom people were coming over. And then we worked with Viacom for about a year, and we made Zoop on 9 formats, and that was an intense time because it was a small team, and we outsourced a few little bits, and I think the Super Nintendo and the Genesis Mega Drive version were handled by some friends, but there was probably about altogether less than 10 people involved in that across all 9 formats. And then we made that for PlayStation 1 as well, and Sega Saturn. It was one of the first games on that, and that got us into that, stepped our whole game up again, because suddenly we're going from these small sort of assembly-based kind of projects up to kind of more structured C programs, and it was my understanding of computer science was expanding a little bit, and I was lucky to work with a guy called Cliff Davies, and he was one of the first hires at Hookstone, and he'd just done I think he'd I don't know if it was a couple of years before, but very recently he finished a master's in maths. He was a genius at maths. He's brilliant. And I got to sit with him, and because I was like, I never really went to school, and I was just sort of bumbled around trying to sort of get the maths together. But all of a sudden I got a really brilliant kind of personal maths tutor, who was sat by side of me, and he kind of answered all my silly questions, and he helped me kind of loads. And he knew the C programming language, and he also knew the C++ programming language, and this was early 90s. So I got into C and C++, and then into 3D maths, and I started to understand, really what could be done, really. And then after that, we made a game called Sentinel Returns, which was a sequel to quite a classic game that made by a guy called Jeff Crammond. It was a classic, and we got the gig to make a sequel to that, and it was going to be a real-time 3D game. And so we kind of just updated that game, really, and give it some new visuals, and we give it a proper 3D engine, and then we give it a really interesting graphical kind of front end. Sorry.
I was just curious. It was like a proprietary engine that you build yourself, or how?
Yes, everything was proprietary. So we'd figured it out. I mean, with Cliff, we could kind of figure that. I mean, it was very simple 3D. There wasn't any of the fancy stuff like shaders and kind of procedural animation or even boned animation. Back then, it was just 3D models on a screen with kind of simple lighting, really. Simple stuff by today's standards. But back then, it was magical.
That was good. Yeah,
it was great. And so we got an engine together, and we made Sentinel Returns, and then we sold that to Psygnosis, which was owned by Sony. And they went and got John Carpenter, the horror director guy, to do the music for the game, and it was wonderful. I was a big John Carpenter fan. I loved all the kind of the 80s horror movies, so it was wonderful to have John Carpenter do the music for our game. So we were like, wow, John Carpenter's doing the music for the game. And it really lifted the game, and it took it to another place. It just got kind of serious. I mean, even now, it's the music he made for it's magical. So we made that, and then I broke away again and set up a company called Mobius with a group of other friends. Well, friends that we part of that team. I guess each time I kind of jumped some people had come with us and some wouldn't, and it kind of build and build. So a lot of the people that we started in Mobius had come from Hookstone and worked on Sentinel Returns and Zoop. Yeah. And back then, I'd for a few years before this, a great guy called Gordon Hall, who I'd known from pretty early 90s. I knew of him through a kind of mutual friend, and he was a remarkable guy, you know, super, just like words don't do him justice, really. He was awesome. And he had a real, he was very extroverted, or he could be. I mean, he was a very complicated character, but he could put himself out there, and he was, you know, he was an easily respectable guy, and I suddenly had somebody who could do good business, yeah, and get deals together, you know, and kind of, you know, and it was a real go-getting business guy, and he was also, you know, he knew his stuff technical, you know, so he was, you know, so he was very well-rounded, brilliant guy, and he joined Mobius, and then there was another guy, David Box, who was a fellow programmer I'd known since Twilight, and then there was at Hookstone we took on a lead artist, Ian Bowden, and he did the graphics for Zoop and Sentinel Returns, and he came with us as well. And at us four, we became the kind of core of Mobius, and then we built from there. So we took on a couple of other friends, and then we grew from 4 to 6, and then I think we stayed around that size for a year or two, and we dabbled in making PC 3D engines, and then the Game Boy Advance came out. Well, it was the Game Boy Color first, and then there was the Game Boy Advance. And because we'd prior done Game Boy stuff, we thought, oh, we'll do that. And we got some contract work to do some Game Boy Color work, and then we went to Game Boy Advance, and we did a lot of work on Game Boy Advance. And this brings us up. This brings us up to sort of near the kind of beginning of this story. So at this point, we'd done a lot of Game Boy Advance stuff, and that ties into what I said originally with the working with the Rockstar on State of Emergency first, and then Max Payne, and then we were lucky to get the PSP stuff, and then suddenly the PSP was the big thing. And we got a lot of offers. This is the most luckiest point I've been in my career. I was right on the money. Well, we were right on the money with the PSP, and we got lots of offers from. We got lots of big game offers to port stuff and bring stuff to the PSP, and we got I think 2 or 3 buyout options, and then Rockstar stepped in and asked to for us to become part of them, and their deal was great, and they was great to work with, and they're super cool. So, you know, we went with Rockstar, and we became Rockstar Leeds, and then so at that point we're Rockstar Leeds. So we've gone through all of that arc, and now we're Rockstar Leeds, and suddenly it all got very serious, you know. So we get a big influx of cash to build up the team, get decent offices in, get all the equipment, and you know, we really put a really solid team together. And then the first projects, I think the first project we did for them, it was Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition, I think, and it was a big thing for Rockstar because it was their street racing game, and it was heads to head with the EA. What's Need for Speed?
Need for Speed,
yeah. Wow. And they were kind of rival titles, and Rockstar knew that Need for Speed were doing a PSP game, so we did the Midnight Club, and we had to have it out at launch. Yeah, and it was extremely serious to have it out at launch. But the problem was that we were bringing it from PlayStation 2, and the PlayStation 2 version wasn't finished yet. It was near finished, but we had to take this near finished game and then port it over to the PlayStation Portable, rewrite the graphics engine, rewrite the the network inside, and a lot of other subsystems to get this thing together. And we had about 6 months to do it, and it was intense stress, that one. Yeah,
like very crunch, I guess. Like
very crunchy. Yeah, so I didn't go home for a long time, and it was,
real.
You just lived in the office. Yeah, well, I lived quite close to the office, and I didn't have anything else going on in my life because I just dedicated myself to just doing the game. So to me, I was just doing what I'd always done. So I was just,
Enjoy.
plus I enjoy it, and it's the first game, and we wanted to really seal the deal really by delivering this game. So we worked super hard on that, and then we got that out, and then whilst that was going on, they came to us and asked to do GTA Liberty City Stories. It wasn't that originally. I think it was originally to take just GTA 3 and bring it over, and then decided to make a whole new story, whole new characters, and kind of build a whole new kind of portable kind of line, really.
Yeah.
So that was going on, and that was quite an endeavor. It wasn't as intense as the Midnight Club because there's a little bit longer to do it. I think it took about a year in all, and a lot of the work that we'd done on the Midnight Club, like the low-level graphics things and the a lot of the tool base, I think that gives a head start, so we could move that and use that on the GTA as well. But my role was to take GTA 3, and I had to strip it down to just take all of the missions out and everything just down to just like a blank canvas, essentially. Yeah. And then, but I don't know if you're aware, but GTA 3 and Vice City and San Andreas used the Renderware engine. Yeah.
Okay.
Which was made by Criterion, and around this time EA, which was a rival, bought Criterion. Yeah, so there was no real option of using Renderware anymore, so we had to essentially write a kind of a replacement engine very quickly. So we had to take out all of the Renderware stuff and fit in a brand new kind of renderer, low-level renderer, and that we kind of took a lot from what we'd done on Midnight Club, and that was the basis of that, and we kind of built that up. So that was it. So we stripped the whole game down to a blank canvas, replaced the whole renderware with our own proprietary kind of renderer, and then we kind of, so that was the first part of the job. And then it was, and then we built a graphics team for reimagining the kind of the graphics and the characters, and then a scripting team for putting the missions together. And then we had a creative team that worked with Dan Houser on the new story. Yeah. So, and we used to kind of work quite closely with Dan Houser. He'd visit the office quite a bit. But we had our own writer, which was a guy called David Bland, who I'd known for many years before, and he stepped up to be the writer, and he worked closely with Dan Houser, and they did the story for Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories. And yeah, so we then we had the creative team making the new stories, and then we had a scripting team that learned to make new missions. We had a technical team that rebuilt the whole kind of engine, and then the art team that rebuilt the city. Yeah. And we worked intensely with that for about a year, and then that's how the game, and we made the game, and then and it came out and it did really well. I think it was one of the biggest sellers on PlayStation Portable, and then we just rolled straight on into Vice City Stories, and just the same thing really. We took Vice City, stripped it back, and just did the same thing really, and sort of built Vice City. I think it was a bit more optimum, and we knew the engine a lot more, and I think the Vice City Stories is probably one of the better PlayStation Portable games, and that came out. I think that did really well as well. So I think all three of his initial PlayStation Portable games did really kind of so well and were reviewed really well and did okay. So yeah, and that kind of brought me up.
I played them. I remember them. They were very nice.
Yeah, they were nice to be able to have 3D on a handheld. Before that, we'd done a little bit. We'd made what was it? Lego Drone Racers on Game Boy Advance, which had a simple 3D engine in it. Yeah, so we were able to do 3D on a Game Boy Advance, and so we kind of done handheld 3D, and it feels really nice that something that's smooth 3D on a handheld. It's really nice. So
It's good
yeah.
feeling. And then after, what happened? Like after the GTA period?
Ah, well, we did GTA. So we did Vice City Stories, then Liberty City Stories, then Vice City Stories, and then we worked for a while on a game called Beta-Rater, yeah, which was a kind of music. Dan Houser had a how would you describe it? A very easy to use music sequencer as a web page, and this was part of Rockstar Games' web page for a while. Yeah. And it was very popular, and they had the idea of taking that and making a kind of PSP little simple music studio. Yeah. And where you could put beats together and just make musical tracks, so like a synth suite for kids to play with, I guess. But saying that, it was quite advanced. It had a lot of advanced features, and we worked on that for a long time. It went through a lot of kind of generations, I guess, until it was it was a complicated project. So we worked on that, and then we worked on Rockstar table tennis game. We worked on Manhunt.
Manhunt, I played it. Remember, it was intense.
Yeah, it's
I remember.
Yeah, they got a lot of kind of a lot of there were a lot of negative press for Manhunt, but I was a horror movie fan, so to me it wasn't.
Yeah, I liked it. Me too.
Yeah, it's just a horror game. What's wrong with having a horror game? But it kind of got a lot of kind of negative press. There's something else I'm missing, I guess. Yeah, there were. So there were
Red Dead something.
Well, that was after Gordon went on and led Red Dead Redemption 1 over at Rockstar San Diego. Yeah, so that was very shortly after I kind of left, because I left in 2007. So I worked intensely from 2004 to 2007, and at that point there were early builds of GTA 4. Yeah, so I'd seen that, and I knew that were going to be something special. And yeah, we'd done the Manhunt. There seems to be another one I'm forgetting. There were a few others, and then they went on, and then I took a sabbatical because I'd worked non-stop since the very beginning of this whole story, 7 days a week, silly hours. So, I burnt out, and
how did you feel? Like, how are you feeling at the moment?
Well, how did I feel then, or how do I feel now?
I mean, back then, and I mean,
all right. I was really, I think it's hard to describe because I imagine it hits everybody differently. But for me, it was, you become like you're hyper aware tension all the time. Yeah, because there's such pressure on you, and you normalize living like that. So you normalize living in a high pressure environment, and you tense all the time, and you can't relax. So it gets to a point where I couldn't relax. Yeah, and I was just, and I remember I thought, it was affecting my health, and so I went to the doctor, and the doctor took my blood pressure and just went, you need to take some time off, because I told him the history, and he was just like, well, your blood pressure's off the charts. And I was smoking, and I wasn't particularly healthy. I wasn't eating well, and I was a mess, really. And I just kind of, just classic burnout. So I kind of got to a point where I needed to take a rest. And then I just took a couple of years off and just pursued. I just did programming, kind of, because I just programmed for fun. So I kind of got into, around that point, the processors started to become, multi-core, and the GPUs were kind of taking off sort of big. and the shaders. So I just immersed myself in that. And but what I didn't realize is that my entire kind of friend basis and all the people, that I kind of socialize with, if you step away from that environment, I mean, they're still in it. Yeah. So your life suddenly goes from super intense to really quiet. Yeah. So
And then
it was just like a weird kind of suddenly it's like I got this room to breathe. So I just got into because I like to do art projects as well. So I just got into drawing and painting and doing technical stuff, and just took it easy for a while, really, and just rebuilt my brain and calmed down. And then after that, I got into just consultancy and helping out indie studios, and I just picked things up, and then I just started to include myself more in the northern kind of games development network, and just just exist within that, really, and around loads of geeky cool people, and then so I consulted and helped a lot of kind of indie startups, and then I worked recently in kind of VR. And then at the moment, I've gone back to just making, as I say, just an original game again. So I've gone kind of full circle now, and I just want to make just something. Well, it's like the games that I made right at the beginning of this story, where I was saying that I wanted to make. I'm sort of in that mindset where I want to make an original game again. Yeah, but I want to make an original game with more of a mature mindset. Not that it won't be kind of enjoyable by all ages. It's just to come at it from a more, someone who's, I guess, well, I hope lived a bit, and can kind of, put that in there. So that's why I started with the writing. So I decided that
Riot,
the writing of the narrative of the game. So I thought, I'm going to make an original game, but I'm going to explore the whole narrative of it to start with, and get the story down, and really plan out a really kind of a strong story. Yeah. So I kind of that's where I am right now, really. So I've kind of worked on a story, and I'm just kind of going into production, but I'm going to try and do it with a small team, a small budget, and just keep going until it's kind of bang on ready. So which may take forever, Yeah. So that's kind of where I am now. So I'm 55 now, and I was 17 at the beginning of this story. So
almost 40 years. So
it's a long time, and the industry's changed a hell of a lot. And in that time, we've gone from the Z80 up into supercomputers, really, now, multi-core supercomputers, big, huge GPU complexity. It's very interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting.
So all of it.
Games is I don't know, it's all encompassing when it comes to computer science. I mean, it's very easy. A lot of people think, oh, it's games, but really, when you kind of look at the technicalities of what goes into a game, it's it's the full spectrum. There's the full spectrum of computer science in a game. And you've got simulation in there, you've got rendering, you've got sort of multiplayer and sort of networking. And then you've got the whole kind of aspects of making a game feel nice to play, and making the camera move nicely, making incorporating the challenge and engaging the player, and you've got all of that kind of artistic aspect as well. And it's it's all artistic, but it's very interesting field. I never get bored of it. I just I don't think I ever will.
It's a real passion, like the definition of passion.
I think, I don't know, because I've never existed outside of it. I think it's just something that I just have to do it. I mean,
it's who you are.
It seems it's the only thing I can do. I think that's it, really. I'm not going to do anything else, because this is the only thing I can do. But luckily, there's still room to go. And I don't know. Recently, I'm starting to think. I don't know, because I know quite a few people who are now getting a little bit older in the industry, and it's the first time I think that I guess there's been a few people who've kind of grown up in a bit older than myself, but now that initial wave of people are starting to approach 55 into the 60s, and you've got these older people, and I think it's quite interesting that that, as I say, that whole mature aspect of what you can bring. Can you make something that's resonant to all ages, really, as opposed to, as I say, initially just sort of making games, and a lot of it's sort of influenced by other games in the market and kind of what you're playing at the time. But I've got interests in kind of I'm interested in movies and the written word and lots of aspects of art, really. So I just want to kind of take those things and bring them and see if I can kind of make something out of all these fragments of exploration that I've kind of done throughout my years.
So inspirational, Mike. It's a very hell of a journey. I couldn't describe it otherwise. I'm pretty sorry.
It doesn't seem that long, but then when you detail it, it does, but it doesn't seem. When I think about it, I think when we were really kind of young at the very beginning of this story, and we were just like 18-year-old kids in that house making budget games, it was, looking back, it was such a fun time, but you don't know it at the time. You just think that's life. But now when I look back and go, oh wow, we were super free, we were young, and we were kind of doing this crazy thing. And it's I look back, it was great. And there's some great, it's like, because unfortunately I've lost a few friends. I mean, Gordon unfortunately died a few years ago, and that was a great blow. It's like, I don't know, it was a big wake-up call, that, really, for because I didn't really realize how much affection, how much love I had for him until he'd gone. And I knew I loved him, but I didn't really understand that until he was gone. And it was like the first time something as profound as like that's happened. And I don't know, I think that and a few other kind of unfortunate losses have kind of shook me a little bit. So I think this is what makes me want to do something original and kind of from the heart a bit, shall we say. But I hope to do that. I don't know,
I'm sure it will.
It'll turn out, and how long it'll take, it might take forever. But I've got a literal deadline on it, so it's like I just to get it out before I kind of go to the next place,
But I'm gonna play it anyway. Like, I'm gonna be like the first wishlist guy for
I'll give you a shout when it's kind of together. But as I said, don't hold your breath. It'll be a while.
Gonna take a while. No worries. So thanks a lot for sharing the journey. It's like super inspirational. It doesn't come it's unusual for me to hear such a long journey in games, because I have people here talking, but this is the first time like going through like from the real first consoles up to right now, and still having the passion to do it after 40 years. This is memorable. Like, it's absolutely outstanding. And we have a question which I believe it's also important to share, especially after this super long and wild journey. So Critic asked us, what is your advice for becoming a game programmer and game developer in 2025? Let's imagine somebody as passionate as you, right? Is it necessary to learn all data structures and algorithms, or only specific ones? If so, which concepts are usually important for game dev? So, long story short, if I want to be a game developer right now, do you have any piece of advice that you would like to share?
Well, I mean, I can only give advice from my perspective, so it's like, what would I advise my younger self, really? I would say, no, it's not important to know all of computer science. You'll pick that up. It's like you got to know the basics of kind of logic and computer program structure and just maintainability. So there's like sort of certain things you want to learn, like clean code and layouts and things like that, and making backups and making sure you don't lose everything, and really kind of sensible decisions like that. But I would say, if you want to become a game programmer, you've got to emphasize the game bit. And kind of you go, well, what do you want to make? So it's like, so if you want to become a game programmer, then you must have a particular game in mind that you want to make. And the only education to make a game is to make one. you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, you just got to get on with it. And I would say, keep it lean as well. I would advise my younger self this. Don't just do what's necessary to realize the game that you want to make. Don't get off on tangents and think, oh, I'll make this system and I'll make this thing, and end up with like, there's lots of opportunities to go off on tangents and lose your path. So a big thing with getting games made, because as I said, right, the advice I got was getting something made, getting something finished. Yeah, it's easy to start things, but it's hard to get them finished. So I would just say, if you want to be a games programmer, then you're going to have to make a game and then have a good idea of what game that you want to start off. It may not end up, you might explore it and then, you know, come up with a brand new mechanic that you really love. And then, you know, if you find that, that's one thing I would say is like, have a good idea about what you want to make something that you would like to play yourself. So you're going to enjoy the process. Yeah. So you kind of, so don't go, oh, I'll make that game because it sells loads, you know, even though you don't play it personally. So pick a game type that you want to play, that you're going to, because you're going to be making it for a long time, and then explore the space really. And if you find a new, just explore. And if you find a new mechanic that changes your whole kind of thoughts about how to, you know, approach the, if you come up with a mechanic that makes the game a lot better, then roll with that. Yeah. So it's like, this is different to getting off on the tangents, because generally that comes from kind of trying to preempt systems that you might need in the future. And it's more kind of it's more the design aspect of sort of keeping kind of pure to the line that you want the game to take. Yeah. So just I don't know, I'm rambling. There's no good, I'm rambling all over, but I would just say, if you want to make a game, you just got to make, if you want to be a games programmer, you're going to have to make a game, and you're going to have to make it, and to stick the course, you're going to have to make a game that you like playing and you want to play, and then you explore that, and then just be dog-headed about it and keep going until you finish it. Yeah, get something finished. It's hard to finish something. Yeah, so get the thing finished, and then experience the full process, and start with a small game and then build up from there. And sometimes small games are wonderful, you know. So don't be scared of making a small little puzzle game. You know, puzzle games can be great. So yeah, I think in that is some advice there. But yeah, but everybody's different. But yeah, perseverance and sticking to your kind of goals and not getting off on tangents. And the computer science will come as you go along. You'll learn stuff. Every game will, because there's a rule that things you learn in the process of your job, they stick with you. I mean, you can go into the books and you can learn all the different approaches and algorithms and things like that, but unless you're applying them to something, they're just trivia almost. You know, you've got to, you've got to, you know, discover useful stuff that kind of, you know, extends your reach into the game you want to make, if that makes sense. It's but yeah, I guess I'm rambling about, but yeah, you've got to,
that's the idea.
Yeah, there you go. There's a lot of kind of things
that can be
to pull out of that, but yeah, perseverance and get it done. Yeah,
cool. And there is another one upcoming, which is, we need to have some design aspect, but companies ask lead code in coding rounds. Is lead code required for games, in your opinion? Oops, sorry.
Additional to make games, we need to have some design aspects, but companies ask leak code in coding round. I don't understand that bit. Leak code.
Yeah, it's just like I can answer for that. Usually, no, if I'm not mistaken, it's not required as from a programming perspective. So I would say focus on the design aspect is important if you want to make your own game. Otherwise, try to study the engine as best as you can. To make it pass.
I'd agree with that. If I could just say about languages, I would say that you need a good understanding of, you know, how computers actually work. Yeah, so study kind of CPUs. You know, you can start with really simple CPUs. I mean, modern CPUs are extremely complicated, but the same principles as they were when they were 8-bit machines, and how RAM works and how the latencies between the different components and what's fast and what isn't, and just understanding how a computer actually works, and then how, say, like languages. I mean, I started with assembly languages and then moved to C and then C++, and then I did a little bit of Java, but I mostly, and some JavaScript and things like that, and a bit of Python, but mostly for games it's been C and C++. But I only use a subset of C++. I'm not I just use the bits that are kind of useful to me. I'm no purist with the languages. I just use it as a kind of almost a form of expression, but I find some aspects of C++ useful. But the C language is absolutely worth learning. So I would say, yeah, look into CPUs and computers in general and how they actually work, and then see how C translates into assembly language, and that'll give you a really good understanding of kind of the technical aspects. But yeah, C, and then the whole family. If you can learn C, then you'll understand all the other languages, really.
Yeah, I agree. Last two, super fast in 2 minutes, 1 minute each. So that's kind of a speed run. When leading a team on a huge IP, how do you balance protecting the vision with letting the team break rules and experiment?
You've got to manage it day to day. Yeah. So you've got to give the team kind of room. They have to feel that, there is some creative room for them to express themselves. You want them to feel involved and definitely part of the team. But you've got to be very, if you're managing a big team, you've got to be the one that's kind of trying to preempt everything that can go wrong. Yeah. A big part of keeping a team together is to understand just how team members interact with each other. It's almost psychology, this aspect of it. You've got how a creative team can kind of click together on a technical level, but you've also got how they get on with each other as well. Yeah. So you've got to pay a lot of attention and listen very closely to your team, and you've got to be, and sometimes it's difficult because some people may have a great idea, but there just isn't time to do it. Yeah. And then, you've got a lot of people that don't want that kind of conflict. So if you want to lead a team, then you've got to take on the responsibility of telling those people, in a nice way without, like affecting the morale, that we just don't have time to do it. And then, directing them towards the goal, sort of redirecting them. So you've got to have an overarching kind of view of where you want to go. You've got to be very aware of how the team intercommunicate. And when you have meetings and you talk, and the team members talk amongst themselves, you want to really listen how people talk to one another. Yeah. And what's said and what isn't said. Yeah. And then make a point of having a lot of one-to-ones with individual characters as well, so you get to understand them on a one-to-one level and what they really, try to, create an environment where they can open up and be, like, I don't know, you're almost like a counselor in a, yeah. So it's a safe space where they feel that they can open up and talk about all the kind of problems and how it's going well or bad or whatever. And it's not going to be judgmental, and you're going to be on their side to, guide them forward. Yeah. So get to know them on an individual level. And then when you know them on an individual level, how they work together in a group. Yeah. And then from that, you can preempt, a lot of problems before they become problems. Yeah. Because a big part of steering it is to see the problems before they really become a problem. If you leave something too long that it breaks down the kind of team, then you could have spotted that a long time before. Usually, it's very rare that you get something that, I mean, you get sort of random occurrences, but usually sort of things that can go wrong in the team, you can preempt them a long way. And that's your job, really, to make sure, that things go smoothly. And you have to be the person that maybe has to talk and say the things that other people don't want to say, because a lot of people don't like conflict, but unfortunately, some hard decisions have to be made. And if you want to lead a team, then you're going to have to do them. And then it's the fine art of doing that without hurting morale and empowering people, so you've got to keep the team morale there. You've got to keep the direction together. But the key thing is to get to know the people and really listen to them. Yeah. And find out what the strengths are, and then put them in the right places and make sure that they click together. Yeah.
Awesome.
And then it'll work out.
Brilliant. Jason, I have no words to express how gratitude I am for you. Thanks for sharing the story.
Welcome. No problem.
Was beautiful. Guys, if you have additional questions, I'm okay to say that they can reach out perhaps on LinkedIn and drop a line.
No problem. Yeah, just reach out. I'm happy to help however I can.
Brilliant. And thanks a lot for being with us and sharing the story, because as I said before, privately, the industry is kind of a tough moment. So it's also cool to hear a little bit of a story of, how starting from the very beginning of the industry and how it developed, and pretty much understand that also the conduct line was the passion of making games whatsoever. Like were big games, small games, new games, whatever games, it's always been the passion. So it was very nice to hear. And thank you.
You're more than welcome. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Lovely. So thanks a lot. Maybe in the future we can do a different session on other stuff. It will be always a pleasure to have you. And guys, thanks for joining us. If you have any questions that you want to drop, feel free to also send them to me, and it's all right, as you wish. And depending on where you are in the world, have a nice day or evening. So thank you. And thanks, Jason, again.
Okay. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Bye-bye.